Everyday people, extraordinary lives. Journey through their stories. Transform your mind. They're building enterprises and community, making a way for each other. That's the remedy. That's the remedy.
Have you ever felt like you were shouting into the void, sending out resumes, reaching out on LinkedIn, trying to network your way forward, only to feel more disconnected than ever? What if the answer isn't doing more, but pausing long enough to reconnect with yourself, clarify what you actually want, and build relationships that don't feel transactional? Today's conversation is about mindfulness, design thinking, intentional peer collaboration, and what happens when you stop treating networking like a full-time job and start treating it like a kitchen table conversation. We also explore what it takes to build a sustainable business while staying grounded in purpose. So grab your favorite beverage and let's get into it. Welcome back to the Web Remedy Podcast. I'm Rinnie, your podcast host and the producer, as well as the executive director of Web Squared, a nonprofit entrepreneur coaching center located in the heart of Pittsboro, North Carolina. And today we are talking about career transitions, community, and what it really takes to navigate uncertainty with clarity and connection. Our guest today is Esra Uzun Mason, a learning and development leader with over 12 years of experience building scalable, human-centered employee development ecosystems for distributed teams across the globe. She's helped increase employee engagement and retention by 20%, enabled over 50% internal promotions within a year, and designed onboarding experiences with 95% satisfaction rates. Esra is also the founder of Papriqqa, a community-centered platform supporting people navigating layoffs and career transitions through cohort-based programs and workshops designed to help individuals reconnect with their strengths and explore new possibilities with curiosity and intention. Welcome, Esra, to the Remedy Podcast.
Thank you, Rinnie. I'm so happy to be here. And I was born and raised in Istanbul, Turkey. I came to the United States in 2009, chasing two things, grad school and a person I'd fallen for. The relationship survived in the end, but I did.
Oh, well, I'm happy that you're here.
Thank you.
Because, if you hadn't come here from Turkey, I never would have met you.
Exactly. And I'm so glad our paths have crossed.
So tell me a little bit about who you are, what happened when you finished your degree, and what you're building with Papriqqa.
Yeah, absolutely. So, after finishing grad school, I spent a year teaching career development and academic writing here at a community college in Greenville, North Carolina. And when my work authorization was about to expire, I decided to move back to Turkey and return to teaching at the university level back there. A few years later, after getting married, I moved back to the US once again. So starting over in a new country in my 20s and then doing it again in my 30s really taught me resilience the hard way, financially and mentally. I had to learn how to navigate unfamiliar systems, build a life from scratch, and discover who I was without the support structures that I'd always relied on back home. And what helped me through all hardship was the generous and loving people I met who were excited to welcome me into their lives. So those experiences really gave me a deep appreciation for the power of community and left me with a deep belief that none of us are meant to navigate life's transitions alone. Professionally, my path has been anything but linear. I began as an English language teacher, guiding students through academic writing and language learning before moving into higher education, where I worked with international students like myself, scholars and faculty, And I spent years creating orientation programs, workshops, and learning experiences designed to make big transitions feel a little bit less overwhelming and more accessible. And that work eventually led me into learning and development. During the pandemic, I took a big leap into the tech world, transitioned out of higher education, and discovered work that felt deeply aligned with who I am, which is creating leadership programs, coaching leaders, and fostering environments where people can stretch beyond what they thought was possible. Today, I lead employee and career development initiatives at a national laboratory where I have the privilege of creating opportunities for people to learn, grow, and navigate their own evolving careers. Alongside that work, like you mentioned, Rinnie, I'm building Papriqqa, which is a community-centered platform for people navigating career transitions and reinvention. And in many ways, it's a reflection of the questions that have followed me throughout my life. How do we create inclusive spaces when everything feels uncertain? How do we rebuild after change? How can we bring more play into the equation when the world feels so stressful? And outside of work, I'm a mindfulness instructor, a yoga practitioner, a horror movie enthusiast, a cat mom, an animal lover, and a writer, slowly making my way through a first novel.
Wow, I want to learn more about the novel. What genre are you writing in?
It's fiction. It started off as a short story as part of a writers group that I'm a part of
Mhm.
and evolved into a novel. So more to come on that soon. I'm still figuring that out.
What genre, though? You mentioned horror movies. Are you a horror novel or a mystery or a rom-com?
That's a good question. I think it's more cultural, maybe, because it's about three characters that are navigating their identity in Turkey. Yeah, so it's not horror. I wish I could write horror, actually. I enjoy watching and reading horror, but I'm not the best writer of horror. So it's more like a literary fiction, I would say.
Well, congratulations. That's exciting. You'll have to keep me posted, and maybe you'll be back on the podcast marketing your novel here in the next year or so.
I
That would
love
be
the
fun.
sound of that. Crossing my fingers. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
So you've spent over a decade in this area of learning and development. You've worked with global, fast-paced organizations and universities. Just out of curiosity, what drew you to this particular work focus in the first place?
That's a good question. Honestly, it is the people. It always comes back to people. I started off as an instructor. I used to teach English as a second language to all age groups and careers back when I first started off. And then I was teaching academic English to college level students. I also had experiences as a career advisor to students and scholars and, ran orientation programs for international students and teachers. So all of these experiences were really rewarding, and it was really wonderful to be able to walk alongside someone in that moment of transition, whether they were moving to a new country or exploring a new career or educational experience. And that's the whole reason why I do this. So when I first arrived in the US, I was someone who needed that kind of support. I needed people to be patient with me, to believe in me before I had done anything to prove that, to make room for me in rooms where I didn't yet feel like I belong. So I got really lucky. I met a lot of great teachers, mentors, friends, and complete strangers, really, who did exactly that for me. And I never forgot how it felt to be on the receiving end of someone's generosity like that when I had so little to offer in return. So when I found my way into this work, it felt less like a career move and more like giving back to my community. And learning and development at its heart is about creating conditions for people to grow. And there's almost nothing more rewarding than watching that happen.
Wow. I mean, you've had quite a journey. You've moved around a lot. You've changed careers a couple of times. We talk a lot about in Web Squared that moment of pivoting from one direction to a next and just having to have an open mindset to make that pivot. And you've also did that. You've rebuilt your lack of term sense of direction more than once. How have those personal transitions shaped the way you think about career development and supporting other people?
I think every transition I've been through helps me explore careers and people from different angles with a lot of appreciation and empathy. Everyone's story is different, but at the end of the day, we all try to find our place in this universe and have a meaningful life doing things we enjoy with the people that we care about. And one of the shifts I learned in my story was letting go of the idea that careers and lives are linear, because they certainly are not, and they're not a ladder to climb either. But that's not how I was raised. I grew up with the traditional script where you choose a major, you pick a job, and you do that until you retire. Maybe you work at the same company for decades, so you choose stability over creativity, maybe security over risk. So the first thing all of my transitions taught me was that script I'd been handed was just one option. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But that's not the ultimate goal. And that's not the only right way to do things. We can have many careers, take different routes at any point in our journeys, and explore our interests. The other thing that I learned, especially when I got laid off from a company a couple of years ago, it was a job in a company that I really, really loved, is how tightly we tie our identity and our worth to our work. When the title
Mm.
goes away, it can feel like your value is going with it. So a lot of what I do now is helping people separate who they are from what they do, because that's the part that survives every transition and gives you something to rebuild from. And once we make that separation, once we focus on what we truly value and love instead of constantly working and missing out on life, it opens up room for exploration, experimentation, and finding a different path. What I offer is the honesty of someone who has been in that kind of uncertainty and somehow come out the other side. And I bring the experience of a facilitator who can guide folks by partnering with them through those messy parts of change and life with intention and structure in a collaborative setting. So basically, I try to normalize the messiness to remind people that not having it all figured out isn't a failure. It's totally part of this process. It's what change actually feels like, but let's do it together.
I resonate with a lot of what you're saying because I had the same job for almost 15 years. At the beginning of the pandemic, I was let go, and there is that sense of like, who am I without
Mm,
this particular job and without this community? And well, I never would have imagined during that time that I would build my own nonprofit coaching center. Thank you for
yeah.
leading from the heart and helping people find those options because, it's really important.
Thank you. Thank you, Rinnie. And I love your story too. Thank you for sharing that. I think sometimes those unexpected changes in life and career can open up a path that we hadn't really considered before, and that might be even more aligned and meaningful.
And the reason you're here and how we met is that you are building something deeply personal for yourself as a entrepreneur, starting a new business. And can you tell us a little bit about it? What is Papriqqa and how did it start?
Sure. Papriqqa really started in 2018 after years of moving between Turkey and the United States. And it started as an attempt to stay connected basically to my roots while also trying to find my purpose and place in these both places. And it began as a simple experiment. And I wanted to connect people or connect with people through art. So every
Mm.
time I visited Turkey, I brought back a few, evil eye keychains, scarves, ceramics painted with traditional tulips and carnations to see if anyone would be interested. And then eventually I connected with a vendor who worked directly with local artisans whose craftsmanship carried generations of history, basically, in Turkey. And I really enjoyed getting to know every piece that carried someone's fingerprints and their creativity and their art. But what I enjoyed most wasn't actually selling the products themselves, but talking about them or talking about the stories behind them. It was the conversations that happen around the art. Someone would stop to look at a ceramic bowl, and suddenly we would start talking about family traditions and immigration and travel and identity in a place that felt like home. So those interactions taught me something important. People were often connecting through the products, through their stories. But what they were really looking for was that connection with each other and with me. And at the time, I didn't fully realize it, but I think those market conversations were really planting the seeds for what Papriqqa is becoming now.
I love that. I love the idea of connecting, art and Turkish art in particular with communities and learning and having conversations with people, and that it is evolving into something much deeper for you. You want to talk a little bit about what that evolution consists of and what's happening?
Yeah, sure. So the shift really happened because I kept noticing similar patterns, both in my own personal life and in the lives of other people around me. Over the
Mhm.
past few years, I've watched so many people navigate major transitions, including myself, like layoffs, career changes, relocations, becoming parents, becoming caregivers, or simply reaching a point where they started asking, like, okay, is this still the life that I want? Am I still aligned with my values? And I was asking some of these questions myself, which can be a really uncomfortable space to be in, right? To not have the
Mhm.
answers. Like you're curious, but also you don't have the answers. It's because we're wired to make sense of things. We're trying to make sense and understand and know exactly what's coming next. And that's not how life goes. That's a really tough process. So that is part of why Paprika has started evolving into something larger than its original form. Like I said earlier, at its heart, Paprika is an experiment in doing transitions a little bit differently as a community. So through Paprika's community kitchen program, small groups of people navigating these transitions come together to reflect, connect, and explore what comes next.
And you call it paprika, but you spell it
Mm.
Papriqqa, which sounds like paprika, the spice. Can you tell us a little bit how you found that name, and is it related to the spice at all?
Yes, it sure is. So the name is actually a playful twist on paprika, the spice as we know it. But I wanted to spice up and bring a little bit fun to an experience that can feel really heavy at times, right? So, as someone who has been laid off before and had to start over many, many times due to immigration and other reasons, I understand the importance of community in moments of transition. And Paprika, I hope, brings a little bit of more warmth and creativity and community to a process that can feel stressful and isolating, especially now when, as we both know, the job market is one of the toughest it's been. And that kind of pressure naturally pushes people to go beyond traditional options and explore entirely new possibilities, whether that's entrepreneurship or a full reinvention of their own path. That can be
Mhm.
exciting, but it can be overwhelming at the same time. So I just wanted to spice things up a little bit and play off of that name and keep it warm and fun.
That's fantastic. And now we are here. It is June 2026, and we've been talking about Paprika and your new career endeavors for the last year or so. Can you walk us through what exactly you do with Paprika, the community kitchen?
Yeah, absolutely. Essentially, the community kitchen is one chapter of Paprika. At its core,
Yeah.
it's a cohort-based experience for people navigating career transitions, uncertainty, or simply that in-between space where the old path maybe doesn't quite fit anymore and the new one hasn't fully formed yet. So where I was basically a year ago when we started talking. So instead of focusing on the traditional career advice or the linear planning, the program creates space for reflection, experimentation, and shared learning. It's a 5 live session program that's supported by accountability partners and add-on coaching services. I chose the name Community Kitchen very intentionally here because in Turkish culture, the kitchen is one of the most important spaces in the home. It is a space where everyone contributes however they can with whatever they have. And it's not about perfection, it's about participation. So that's the experience that I wanted to create with this program, keeping the same theme of spices and cooking and baking. And in the community kitchen, people come together to cook through their next chapter in life. We take small, tangible steps instead of overwhelming leaps. We explore ideas, test possibilities, and learn from each other in real time. So there is no expectation that you arrive with everything figured out, fully cooked. It's also intentionally hands-on. Again, it's a kitchen, right? So we get a little messy in the best way possible. We reflect, we try things, we iterate, we support one another. It's a shared space where people can slow down and reconnect with themselves and feel supported by others who are going through maybe similar experiences. So it's part learning community, part creative lab, basically, for what comes next.
Can you speak about the tools that you use in your community kitchen to bring that playfulness and that experimentation to light?
Sure. I'm basically leveraging my experiences in teaching mindfulness, design thinking, my experiences as a, literature major, as a creative writer, and as a coach. So the way I bring these tools, the reason why I bring these tools together is because they speak to different parts of the transition process. As you can imagine, when you're in transition, there are a lot of emotions that we're processing, right? There's a lot of identity questions, there's a lot of anxiety. So mindfulness helps create space so people can slow down, get grounded, hear themselves a little bit more clearly instead of reacting from a space of fear and urgency.
I'm familiar with mindfulness practice. Can you tell me what is design thinking, though? Because I think I don't know what that is.
Design thinking framework comes from product design that's been applied to life and career problem solving. It
Hmm.
actually comes from the book Designing Your Life. It's been introduced as a mindset that helps people approach change with a little bit more curiosity and a little less pressure. So, the idea behind design thinking is that it's an iterative process where you empathize with the user, which is yourself, to understand where you are in the process of changing your career, maybe, or solving a problem that's been in your mind for a while. But instead of feeling like you have to solve it all at once and figure out the entire future figured out, the framework encourages you to think, what's one small thing I can actually test to move towards that goal or to solve that
Hmm.
problem? So let's say you want to open a coffee shop, right? But you have no
Hmm.
experience working in a coffee shop, or you just don't know what it involves, how much it costs, etc. So instead of going all in and putting all your savings in, you rent the space, you buy the coffee, and then you figure out, oh, shoot, like I actually don't like this. Or you get into something that you don't know how to proceed with because you have no experience. So instead of doing that, design thinking helps you. Okay, what is one small experiment I can do right now? What is something that I can do that's not going to cost me anything? Maybe volunteering or working at a coffee shop or shadowing someone or
Hmm.
interviewing someone who has their own coffee shop. So it allows you to look at it from different perspectives without having to go all in all at once.
With this imagery of a community kitchen, I have an image of your work, like kind of like having a space where people come and they have the ingredients in front of them, but they might not be orderly, you know? And then you're
Yes.
putting a little spice here and a little spice there and throwing a little salt there and, mixing it all together and then maybe just taste testing it a little bit. Do you want to speak a little bit about that metaphor, what that work entails of bringing people together?
Along those lines, life transitions, don't really come with instructions. They're complex. We all have different perspectives, different life experiences and backgrounds. So there is really no clean step-by-step recipe for what to do when your career starts changing or when something you thought was stable suddenly isn't, or when you have that feeling of, I know something needs to change, but I don't know what yet. And in those moments, I'm sure some folks might relate, people get a lot of advice overload, and
Mm.
there's a lot of information and opinions out there about what works best and how to do XYZ, which can bring more pressure to decide quickly, or, oh my gosh, everyone seems to have figured it out. Am I behind? And in all of that, I think what we're missing is a space to actually slow down, to really reflect on what your specific story is, because we all have different processes and experiences, like I said. We need spaces to try things out without needing them to be perfect. I think that's the thing that we're missing here. A
Mm.
space to be in conversation with other people who are also figuring it out in real time, but may have different life experiences and stories. And that's where I think the real creativity happens. So when we combine reflection, experimentation, and community, that's something really powerful, because reflection helps you make sense of where you are, which is something we don't often do, especially when you're in an emergency, or you're in a state of urgency to find the next job or to figure out your next steps. We're on autopilot.
Mm.
And then experimentation is basically helps you move forward without needing certainty. Feel a little bit comfortable in that space of ambiguity, which is really tough to do. But the community is what glues all that together so that it gives you the sense of reflection, gives you the sense of security. So, yeah, that's really what this work is about for me, right? Not trying to give people a fixed recipe, because it's not going to work for everybody. Everybody has different taste buds, everybody has different unique backgrounds.
Fantastic. Thank you. Do you want to speak a little bit about why you settled on a sliding scale approach to your business?
I know that big life changes don't happen on an equal playing field.
Mhm.
So some people join the community kitchen maybe with a steady paycheck, right? They have their full-time job, but maybe they're just curious and exploring what's next for them. Maybe they have professional funds that they can use, which is great. But then there might be other folks who are navigating a layoff. Maybe they're taking care of family members or trying to rebuild after a major life change. Or maybe they're investing in a completely new direction. So I didn't want cost to be a thing that prevented someone from accessing support, connection, and community during this period when they need it most. At the same time, I believe it's important to honor the value of the experience. So, sliding scale at this point allows people to contribute at a level that reflects their current circumstances, while
Okay.
also helping sustain the program for everyone involved. It's rooted in trust and belief that people are generally the best judges of what they can realistically afford. And in many ways, it reflects the philosophy behind the community kitchen itself. So, in a community meal, some people bring key ingredients, some bring the drinks, some bring their time, some bring their expertise, some simply show up hungry. And everyone contributes differently, but everyone belongs at the table. So, my hope is that participants leave with new perspectives, meaningful relationships, and practical tools for navigating what's next in a community that's willing to invest in one another's growth.
So the Web Remedy podcast was developed as a mindset shifting podcast for entrepreneurs. I want to ask you if there's been any significant mindset shifts for you while you've been building Papriqqa.
Yes, a lot of mind shifts. One of them, I think, is not seeking perfection, but
Mm.
maybe building in public and moving away from getting it all right to learning. So basically trying to walk the talk. For a long time, I approached new projects with the idea that I needed to get them all right from the get-go, right? And entrepreneurship has taught me that the goal isn't perfection, it's experimentation. So every conversation I hold, every workshop I host, The launches, relaunches, even the setbacks are data for me. It's the feedback that helps me understand what people actually need and how I can serve them better. And another shift, this actually also comes from design thinking process, which is reframing. So redefining and reframing what success looks like for me. Because in the
Mm.
corporate world, we're often trained to think like, okay, you got to focus on the metrics, the outcomes, the milestones, and how many people joined. Those things are important, of course, but when you're building something new, success can look like having a meaningful conversation, helping maybe one person see a new possibility and have that light bulb go off, and simply having the courage to keep showing up and keep putting yourself out there before you know exactly where the path leads. And
Mhm.
perhaps the most personal shift has been learning to trust the slower growth, the simmering process, if we were to go with the cooking metaphor again, because online, especially, we hear a lot of stories about overnight success, made $1 million, right? But the most meaningful things are really the slow simmering, the gradual learning process through consistency, relationships, and just trying it again. So, in many ways, Papriqqa has reinforced something I already believed, but I needed to experience myself firsthand because you don't have to hold the whole recipe figured out before you begin. You just need to start with what's on the table, stay curious, maybe add a little bit salt, pepper here and there, and be willing to keep adjusting as you go and see what tastes better for you.
That's fantastic. And you're making me hungry, by the way. I just keep thinking, I just have this image of all these people in the kitchen together. I know it's not a literal kitchen, but the imagery brings kitchen to my mind every time you mention it. So, what advice would you give to somebody maybe who's in the middle of a career transition right now?
One thing that I tell them, and I always tell myself, is to find joy wherever you can in the process. There are times when you might feel stuck, you might feel afraid, anxious, frustrated, you might want to throw your computer out the window, right? I've been there. There are days that we experience these different emotions. Sometimes we need to accept where we are and start from that point. So, those are normal parts of a career transition. The goal isn't to avoid those feelings or rush past them, it's to acknowledge them without judgment and remember that they're temporary visitors. When I was laid off, I think one of the challenges I had was I was so focused on one thing, and that was finding the next job. So I was constantly applying for jobs without taking a breath. I spent hours applying, refreshing my inbox, and I was so frustrated and sometimes ashamed that I could see beyond that immediate goal. So looking back, I realized I had become too attached to a single solution. And I thought there was only one path forward. So I encourage people to pause, reflect, catch a breath, right? Go for a walk, make space for things that bring them joy, even in these difficult seasons. Take a walk, connect with a friend, try to learn something new, create something new, volunteer and give yourself permission to be a whole human, not just a job seeker. And the irony is that clarity often arrives when we stop gripping so tightly to a single outcome, right? Like the shower effect. We get our best ideas in the shower when we can't hold a pen and a pencil, not when we're constantly staring at the problem in the eye. So sometimes the best thing is to walk away, to think clearly instead of pushing more without a break. So, yeah, if you're in the middle of a transition, be kind to yourself, keep taking action, and don't forget to live your life while figuring it out.
Ezra, you have given such wonderful advice, wonderful imagery. This has been such a rich conversation. Thank you for your presence on the podcast.
Pause
I look
again.
forward to editing and putting this all together. But before we close, this is the most important question, I think, is where can people find you and learn more about Papriqqa?
So, one, they can look me up on LinkedIn and reach out to me in my inbox. I'm always down for a good in person or a virtual coffee chat. I also have been sharing about Papriqqa on LinkedIn, so they can check out my landing page as my website is getting finalized. I'm also writing a bi-weekly-ish blog on Substack called Papriqqa's Community Kitchen, which is focused on life and career transitions through personal anecdotes and reminiscence on a word or a phrase from a different part of the world. It's free to subscribe to Papriqqa's Community Kitchen on Substack. And I welcome co-writers. If you're interested in joining me for one of the blog posts, drop a line. I always welcome a new connection.
I'll be sure to put your contact information in the show notes and links to your LinkedIn and your Substack blog. Do you have anything else you'd like to share with the listeners before we wrap?
Thank you. So I think I'm just going to add, so design thinking framework was popularized and developed by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans, which applies the creative thinking problem-solving principles that is used in product design that was implemented into life and career decisions and transitions. It originated in the Silicon Valley and Stanford University by innovators like Apple and Google, and design thinking has become a powerful tool for both innovation and personal growth at this point. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you for sharing, Esra. This has been a great conversation. I look forward to touching base with you soon, and I think we'll call it a wrap.
Thank you so much, Rinnie, for having me on the podcast. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you, and I look forward to connecting more.
Esra's story reminds us that the businesses and communities we build can be more than functional. They can be transformational. They can create space for people to pause, reconnect, and move forward with clarity and connection. When we lead with mindfulness, collaboration, and intentional design, we don't just help people find their next job, we help them find their next best move. If you're navigating a transition right now, remember this: you don't have to have it all figured out. You just need a space to reflect, experiment, and connect with others who are trying to figure it out too. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. And as we always say, our evolution begins with dialogue. Thank you for listening to the Web Remedy Podcast, a mindset shifting project of Web Squared. Wealth Through Entrepreneurship for Black and Brown Businesses is a North Carolina nonprofit located in Chatham County. We offer incubator accelerator business services to Black, BIPOC, and rural entrepreneurs. Our podcast producer and editor is Rinnie Orr, the executive director of Web Squared. Our music is by Deja Bell and Maddie McGaskill. Our podcast studio is located at the 79 West Innovation Hub in Pittsboro, North Carolina. We realize that building an ecosystem of support is critical to achieving our mission. Your donation supports Web Squared's coaching services, the promotion of the businesses and entrepreneurs we serve, and of course the podcast. To learn more, please visit our website at websquared.org.